And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Wednesday morning's flying weather. We've got IFR Brooks Range in the North Slope out to the eastern Arctic coast there, and some IFR here along the Alaska Range up into the Tanana Valley there and over the eastern interior. Another batch here just east of Norton Sound there to the Yukon River, and then some IFR here out over the central Bering Sea that moves quite close to the Pribilof Islands, and then from Adak westward, more IFR, otherwise marginal VFR everywhere else except the panhandles have some VFR showing up there, mainly along the coast. And then for the afternoon, marginal VFR here everywhere over the interior and the Bering Sea, but the IFR now, the Brooks Range, now encompassing all of the Arctic coast there in the North Slope. Band of IFR up here just south of the Yukon River there, and then more IFR here along the Alaska Range, Western Alaska Range, on down to Kamishak Bay and even into the Aleutian Range there, with IFR up along the North Gulf Coast and pretty good VFR over the central and southern southeast coast. And out to the west, some IFR pushing into the western Aleutians here, but not too widespread. And then for Wednesday morning, that area seems to vanish. And Bering Sea, mostly just marginal VFR down to the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, into Kodiak Island. Good IFR holding here, Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, and this area here up in the eastern interior. Also a zone here from the central interior, southward along the Alaska Range, and still a narrow band of IFR up along the North Gulf Coast, on down across the central and eastern southeast coast. And then for Thursday afternoon, finally some breaking up of that marginal VFR, becoming VFR in the Gulf of Alaska up to the North Gulf Coast. Northern Panhandle, mostly VFR, mostly marginal to the south. Still IFR hanging along the Alaska Range, and then the big area IFR holding up there from the Brooks Range out to the Arctic Ocean. Otherwise out west, just marginal VFR here from the interior, covering just about all of the Bering Sea and all of the Aleutians from Kiska Island eastward here right up into Bristol Bay. And for the passes, Henatuka-Kanatagan, IFR, pretty likely throughout the day tomorrow at times, especially in the morning hours. Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR. And for rainy, IFR, same forecast for windy, IFR, as well as Isabel, Mentasta, marginal VFR, with Tanita looking pretty marginal as well, and Portage, IFR, and occasional IFR for Chilkoot and White. Freezing levels here, 2,000 feet with that persistent northerly flow here all the way down south of the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians, covering the eastern Bering Sea, coming back up to about 4,000 feet over toward the eastern border here. Otherwise, roughly about 4,000 to 5,000 feet there across the southeast coast, and 2,000 to 4,000 feet out over the western Bering Sea and the central western Aleutians. Icing, we've got some icing with that front coming into the northern Bering Sea here, staying north of the Aleutians and probably west of the Pribilof Islands, and then an elevated threat of some icing of the isolated moderate rime or mixed varieties here over the, from the Yukon River, actually possibly the Kobuk Valley, down along the Alaska Range to Kodiak Island, up along the North Gulf Coast, and covering just about all of the southeast coast. And for the jet stream here, main jet well south of the area, kind of on the cool, showery side of the jet stream here for the much of the mainland Alaska area, including the Panhandle, and actually out west too, the jet even down off the chart here, the main core there, but still some 100-knot northwest winds are coming out of the Russian Far East associated with this low tracking eastward, but not too bad over the Aleutians. And then at 9,000 feet, you can see the stronger winds associated with this low here, way up there over the northwest Bering Sea at about 40 knots, coming down close to the west central Aleutians. And then northwesterlies anywhere from, up to 35 knots here across the Alaska Peninsula. Pretty light and variable over the interior from the Arctic coast all the way down into the North Gulf Coast and the Panhandle. And for 3,000 feet, no significant winds here for the southeast coast into the Gulf, all the way up to the Arctic coast, maybe 20 knots out of the west with that weakening low there just to the north of Barter Island. And then north to northwest winds here, 20 to 30 knots from the southwest interior across the Alaska Peninsula there. And then ahead of the front here, coming across the Bering Sea, there's some 40-knot winds. Turbulence-wise, not too bad. Isolated moderate turbulence tomorrow here for the southwest interior, Bristol Bay, maybe to Kodiak Island, especially the southwest part of the island there, as well as Fogneck Island and the Alaska Peninsula, and possibly from Adak out to Kiska Island. Otherwise, smooth most everywhere else.